I am a recovering addict. I've been clean since May 13th of 2010. I ended up getting in a lot of trouble initially, and that's kind of what started things recovery-wise for me. And, a little bit of back and forth, relapse, and, not so good things, but ultimately it's the recovery community. It's really that what pulls us all together, among other things, I think.
Can you tell me the process of starting recovery to where you are today?
Yeah, so in the beginning of 2010, I started to get arrested somewhat frequently, just for drugs, making poor choices. And they offered me drug court and treatment. They were like, well, it looks like all of your charges are, the same. I was like, yeah, so I took them up on the treatment option. Unfortunately, at the time, I didn't want to be clean. I think that I didn't know that I believed I could be. It had been, so long, and so I just wanted to get out of jail. So I went to treatment, and because I wasn't taking it seriously, I ended up going back. So it was a little bit of back and forth, and without being too long-winded about it, I ended up leaving treatment, relapsing, and I was in big trouble. There was, a warrant, and I was really upset. I didn't want to keep living at that point. And I was introduced to NA in treatment, and I had made contact with someone from there, and I just started reaching out. I think I wanted to live, and I knew there was a better way. I'd seen people that were clean, that had been using addicts, and so I was aware that it was possible. I just didn't know how to do it at all. But I ended up turning myself in, sitting the rest of my time, and I got out. I relapsed one time since then, and from there it's been a process, but it got better quick enough to stay around, I think.
Any other obstacles or bumps in the road along your recovery?
I mean, life is hard sometimes, it just, like right now, it's a little weird. Just, people dying from different causes and troubles, and just, the day-to-day stuff that is challenging sometimes. But I think that perspective is a huge benefit that I can tap into. I've been thinking a lot about gratitude recently, and that things have been better, but they've been worse. And even though things are challenging, that doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that it's a bad day. And instead, really trying to, sometimes it's easier than others, but really trying to focus on the things that I am grateful for. And that tends to put things in perspective, that it's not so bad,
How will getting your story out there sort of normalize people in recovery?
I think that it's something that a lot of people have incorrect assumptions about. No fault of their own. I think that things are dramatized, and people have had one experience with an addict that was negative, so and so forth. But it's really, in recovery, I mean, there's a lot of people now that I know that never knew me when I, was using, and that's a really cool thing. And when they hear it comes up, and I tell people, when it comes up, and, when they hear about that lifestyle and those things, they're like, I can't even picture you like that. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm doing something right then. But it's I feel like making it normal, it makes it seem attainable to some addicts. It makes it a little bit more real and not so far away, like, oh, in years I'll be okay. After years of commitment to recovery and all this hard work, I might be okay. It's like, no, there's people every day, just making progress, and you would never know. And not every addict is gonna rob you or do all the bad things, that people think. And so I think it's good for both addicts and non-addicts, to just have a clear perspective of what it is and not just what's bad about it.
What resources have been most valuable to you in your recovery?
I would say, the recovery community is for sure number one. I try to think about doing this alone, and I can't even conceive of it. Like, everything I know about recovery I learned from other people. Like, I didn't know anything coming in, but I feel so fortunate that there is a community of people that are super willing to share. You just have to ask, and they're you get a lot of hugs in recovery. It's a very huggy community. And people want to share what works, and there's really an empathy that's unparalleled. When you hear someone share about things that you personally have experienced and still feel lost and afraid about, it makes me listen to them. And I have questions. I still do. It's a continual process, and it's exciting in that it goes up and down. Sometimes it's a drag, but most times especially at events like this, and just seeing like all the love and support, it's a privilege, that it's even out there, that it's even so accessible. So, and I know also that a lot of people, there are addicts that are using that they don't even know that there's a recovery community available. And so, putting on events like this and being open about it, not with the gory details, but just open about it and willing to talk about it and not make it weird. It's so important.
What would you want to share with someone who's in their very first steps in recovery?
Just keep coming around. It gets better. It really sucks, and there's no way around it, but it gets better quick enough that it's okay. And just talking to people, and really, I've heard this before, and this resonates with me, that the gift of desperation it's a really powerful thing. Pain is a huge motivator. And I really held on to that in early recovery, with cravings, and you don't have any life skills, and like I couldn't imagine getting a job or going to school or doing any of the things that I've done in the time that I've been clean. So it's just moment by moment. Sometimes one day is too much to, think about. So I would break it down into what am I going to do to make sure I'm okay right now? And then that moment has passed, and it'll be okay, and then we're having another hard moment. So what am I going to do in this moment to be okay? And then all of a sudden the days come together and months come together, and and it gets better, like for real. So thank you.
Any suggestions for others in long-term recovery?
Well, I wouldn't say that I know a whole lot about long-term recovery. I mean, I've only been clean since 2010, but I've noticed that in what others have shared, and little bits here and there, like as recovery ebbs and flows for me, that complacency can be a problem. It's really getting into it and going really hard, and all the recovery stuff initially, early in recovery, it really keeps you grounded and you're plugged in with everyone. But as time passes and we get busy with jobs and families and all the things, recovery can tend to slide a little bit, I think. And even not long-term recovery, I've noticed complacency and having to take a step back and be like, if I don't have my recovery as my baseline, none of that other stuff that I'm busy with is even going to be there. So it's really easy to prioritize in that light.